You're a kid growing up in South Central LA in 1984. Your neighborhood's decent, you know? Families look out for each other. Kids play ball in the streets. Then something happens. Almost overnight, cheap crack cocaine floods your block. Your neighbors turn into addicts. Your friends start dealing. The violence gets insane. Murder rates go through the roof. And everybody's blaming the dealers, the addicts, the community. But nobody's asking the real question. Where did all this crack come from? Turns out, the United States government had a hand in it. I'm talking about the CIA. The same people who are supposed to protect Americans actually helped pump cocaine into black neighborhoods, so they could fund an illegal war thousands of miles away. And when one reporter dug into it and tried to expose the truth, they ruined him, destroyed his career, his reputation, everything. This ain't some wild conspiracy theory either. It's backed up by government investigations, congressional testimony, thousands of declassified documents that prove it happened. This is the real story behind that show Snowfall. Let's get into it. So, rewind to 1979. There's a revolution in Nicaragua. The Sandinistas overthrow their dictator and set up a socialist government that's friendly with Cuba and the Soviet Union. Ronald Reagan becomes president, and he's looking at this thinking, it's a communist threat sitting right in America's backyard during the Cold War. Reagan's answer? Let's fund some rebels to take down the Sandinistas. In 1981, he gives the CIA the green light to train and arm these counter-revolutionary forces called the Contras. Reagan literally goes on TV calling these guys the moral equivalent of our founding fathers. But then the American public finds out about this secret war and people aren't feeling it. By 1982, Congress passes these laws called the Boland Amendments that straight up say the CIA and Defense Department can't provide military support to overthrow Nicaragua's government anymore. So what does the Reagan administration do? They just go around Congress. They break the law. Oliver North, this lieutenant colonel, and some other officials create this secret operation they call the Enterprise to keep the Contras funded. They're selling weapons to Iran even though there's an embargo, getting donations from wealthy Americans, taking money from foreign governments, and they're working with cocaine traffickers. The whole thing blows up in 1986 and becomes the Iran-Contra scandal. 14 people in the administration get charged, but most of them end up getting pardoned anyway. The drug trafficking angle, though, that gets swept under the rug. Nobody really talks about it until this journalist Gary Webb starts digging around. August 1996, San Jose Mercury. News drops this bombshell 3-part investigation called Dark Alliance, written by Gary Webb. What he found was absolutely wild. Webb tracked down this whole drug network that had ties to the CIA-backed Contras. These guys were moving tons of cocaine into Los Angeles throughout the 80s. The money from selling that coke, it went straight to funding the Contra rebels. And all that cocaine helped kick off the crack epidemic that wrecked black communities nationwide. The main players were real people, not made up. There's Danilo Blandon, this Nicaraguan guy with an MBA who became a huge cocaine supplier. He's got connections to Contra leadership, and he actually testified in court that he sold drugs specifically to fund the rebels. Then you got Norwin Meneses, another Nicaraguan, who was basically a drug kingpin supplying Blandon with cocaine from Colombian cartels. Multiple people said the CIA was protecting this guy. And the biggest piece is Freeway Ricky Ross. This young dude from South Central who couldn't even read became one of the biggest crack dealers in America. Ross was buying his cocaine from Blandon at way below street prices. We're talking $10,000 to $14,000 per kilo, when everyone else was paying $30,000 or more. The whole operation worked like this. Cocaine gets flown from Colombia to Central America. Smugglers with Contra connections move it to California. Blandon sells it cheap to Ross. By the mid-80s, Ross said he was buying anywhere from 100 to 455 kilos every week and pulling in $2 to $3 million a day. Federal prosecutors figured his operation pushed several tons of cocaine across the country, and brought in over $600 million total. That's $600 million worth of crack flooding black communities, and the CIA knew it was happening. Gary Webb publishes this investigation with receipts, court testimony, hundreds of interviews backing him up. You'd think every news outlet would be all over this, right? Nah, the opposite happened. The big newspapers turned on Gary Webb hard. LA Times, Washington Post, New York Times all published hit pieces going after his reporting, questioning his sources, saying he made the CIA's involvement sound worse than it was. His own newspaper, the Mercury News, backed away from the story. They demoted Webb. He ended up resigning and couldn't find work anywhere in journalism after that. His whole career got torched. 2004, Gary Webb's found dead at 49. 2 gunshot wounds to the head. They ruled it a suicide. But here's the crazy part. While the media was destroying Gary Webb's life, the government quietly admitted he was mostly right. 1998, the CIA's Inspector General Frederick Hitz does this massive investigation. Goes through 250,000 pages of documents, interviews over 365 people across 4 different continents. What does he find? More than 50 Contras and Contra-linked groups were involved in drug trafficking. The CIA knew about all these drug allegations involving people connected to the Contras. CIA officers didn't report the drug stuff like they were supposed to. But the worst part? The CIA had this secret deal with the Justice Department that basically let CIA assets traffic drugs without getting reported to law enforcement. They literally gave themselves permission to let drug dealers operate. Inspector General Hitz testified to Congress and said, the CIA had one overriding priority: to oust the Sandinista government. CIA officers were determined that the various difficulties they encountered not be allowed to prevent effective implementation of the Contra program. In other words, fighting communism mattered more than stopping drugs from destroying American neighborhoods. Senator John Kerry's committee found similar stuff. The State Department paid over $806,000 to 4 companies owned by known drug traffickers and called it humanitarian aid for the Contras. 1986, Congress passes the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. They created this sentencing rule that would mess up a whole generation. 5 grams of crack got you the same mandatory 5-year sentence as 500 grams of powder cocaine. That's a 100-to-1 difference. And since about 80% of people caught with crack were black, while powder users were mostly white, you can guess how that played out. People locked up for non-violent drug crimes went from 50,000 in 1980 to 400,000 by 1997. By 1995, almost 1 out of every 3 black men between 20 and 29 was either locked up, on probation, or on parole. America became the world leader in locking people up. The crack epidemic eventually died down, but not because the government did anything. Justice Department research showed it ended because the next generation saw what it did to their communities and wanted no part of it. We're still dealing with the fallout today. Mass incarceration keeps going. The war on drugs still hits black and brown communities the hardest. People don't trust government institutions, and neighborhoods that got hit in the 80s are still trying to recover. What your government does overseas affects what happens at home. When they put covert operations ahead of protecting their own people, somebody's gotta pay the price. And in this case, that price got paid almost entirely by black Americans. That's how the CIA got away with it. And most people still don't know this happened. If this opened your eyes, share this video. This is history they don't teach in schools. Hit subscribe for more stories they don't want you to know. Thanks for watching.